Asleep in their bed on a cold winter's night, the people of Altdorf were caused such a fright, for the Stunties and Dark Elves, two rivals much hated, fired shot, bolt, and cannon, and blasts unabated. Harpy screeched overhead, and the Witch King was prowling, but the Dawi stood firm as the winds began howling. Generations had passed since the dwarfs were forsook, yet their anger burned bright. Thorgrim, get the book! Welcome, my friends, to the outskirts of Reichland, and today, the grudgeoning begins anew as Malekith the Witch King attacks the Dawi once more. Dark Elves vs. Dwarfs as the architect of the War of the Beard rides his pimpin' Dino Chariot into the fray, equipped with power from darkness, Soul Stealer, Gaze of Malice, and two very hungry raptors. Hard to go wrong with him here. He's very good at making Dawi even shorter. There are two Dark Shards in the center for trading in the skirmish duel, and three Sisters of Slaughter, who, with their murderous mastery and Trial of Blades, get a pretty absurd stat line and have a ton of mobility for flanking and shutting down ranged options. Plus, they effectively get 20% ward save in melee with their poison, on top of their already high melee defense and physical resist, so they can be pretty annoying to shut down. 3 Harpies overhead, great for harassing cannon crews and chasing off routing units. And for the Dwarfs of the Karazhankur, Rangers lead the way. It's a full Ranger themed build here. They'll make Shrek cry tears of pure emotion because it has layers like an onion. With Morganling's Ironbreakers holding down the center with their high 82 melee defense, bunch of Dwarf Warriors and Miners, a Rune Lord completely stripped naked except for Wrath and Ruin, and as always, that snare is going to be very important for neutering a rush build. 4 Rangers and a unit of Bugman's finest, 2 cannons, and 2 Trollhammer torpedoes, which are the big counter to chariots, round out the rest of the build. So, I actually really like this matchup. Some of the best games I've ever seen were Dawi vs. Dark Elves because they both have a lot of counters to each other. They have a very fluffy reason to hate one another, and there are a bunch of ways to play it for both parties. 2 Dark Riders Vanguard deployed in the back of the map to shut down cannon crews and Rangers, and you can go super chariot heavy with the Dark Elves here, but you risk losing a ton of value to Trollhammer torpedoes, to Thunderers, to cannons, and snares. So a lot of players will kind of go what the Lizardmen do. You know how they swarm the field in a tide of Skinks and Saurus? You can go for a lot of really wide infantry builds with a few elites like the Sisters and Executioners for a bit more punching power, and just go mano-a-mano, and that can be pretty difficult for the Dawi to deal with. So that's what we're seeing here. A ton of infantry. 3 Sisters means a ton of ways for the Dark Elves to get into the rear without worrying about getting shot at by Trollhammers, because infantry doesn't care about them a whole lot. And Harpies are great for zoning out Rangers, Quarrelers, Thunderers, and any kind of ranged play. As I said, this strat would make Shrek blush, layer after layer that these Druki must cut through, and all the meanwhile, the cannons are blasting. And this is why spreading the field with the Dawi is generally a better option than those super compact box formations. Because once a box is compromised and the range tools are all tied up, it just becomes a question of whether the Dwarfs can outgrind in a pure melee duel. But you're not getting value out of like half your army, so it's hard to win like that. But it's not hard to win when you're getting blasting charge volleys off like that one. Norgrimling's Ironbreakers absolutely eviscerating the front ranks of Bleak Swords on the way in, clearing them out super quick, and I don't even know if they're going to be able to make it into melee. But with a formation like this one, anytime one unit is compromised, 3 others are firing in from the flanks and still getting good value. And it forces the attacker to make decisions on which units to tie down and which of his own he must sacrifice. Black Ark Corsairs are certainly going to be able to handle the Miners in the front ranks no problem whatsoever. But meanwhile, more blasting charges are going off, destroying the Sisters of Slaughter, getting them down to half HP, and it's a great way to open the game for the Dwarfs. Such a good unit, dude. The Ironbreakers in Burnished Gold and Crimson are super strong. 82 melee defense is so incredibly difficult for units to cut through, and they've barely taken any damage whatsoever. But the Dark Shards will still be a problem for them. They do have a ton of armor, and they do have a high missile block chance, but it's a lot of armor piercing going their way at the moment. Harpies got Rune of Wrath and Ruined. They're slowed down, Rangers firing in from the back to destroy them, and Harpies are actually a really important factor in this game. If they're able to get in and keep those Rangers tied down for huge portions of the battle, it's going to be very difficult for the Dwarfs to do what they want to do. If they can get cleared off the map very quickly and chased off the map, then it's a situation where the Dark Elves have already lost a lot of their options for shutting down the ranged tools. But already, Bleak Swords, Infantry, Malekith the Witch King, on his dual Raptor chariot coming through, and Rune of Wrath and Ruin has already been used, so he cannot be slowed down. And Destroyer gonna do what his name implies, slicing through Dwarfs as it carves its way through their formations, through their shield walls, and a Dark Rider Vanguard ambush coming in from behind, and that's gonna be painful. Dark Riders, especially when Murderous Prowess pops, can get pretty nasty for units like Rangers, and if you're going for a Ranger-themed build, then one of the things you're trading off is the high armor and the high missile block chance of the Thunders. The Rune Lord will get some vengeance and strike maybe 1 or 2 grudges out of the book, but many more are going to be entering the Damazkron today. As we well know, this battle is not going to be an easy one for either side, and each swing of that Rune-forged hammer should be able to deal a little bit of damage to the Dark Riders, but those Rangers are probably going to die with Malekith on top of them. But yeah, there are 2 or 3 other Rangers all firing in at the exact same time, and the #1 priority is get rid of the Dark Riders and get rid of the Harpies, so it's only infantry and Malekith that the Dwarfs have to answer to. Bleak Swords are hounding the Trollhammer Torpedoes as they escape to the edge of the map. Harpies doing a good job of tying down some stuff, but really they should be going after the ranged options for now. And the Norgotlin's Ironbreakers holding on firmly with that 82 melee defense, but the Dark Shards have really done a number on them. They are going to be able to finish off those Sisters of Slaughter, but the AP range shots coming in proved to be a little bit too much over the course of the battle. Malekith into the Trollhammers, but won't deal a tremendous amount of damage off impact there. They're very tanky, very hard to destroy, and nice surround off on the Sisters of Slaughter and the Black Ark Corsairs who are trying to get into the cannon crews. And that is a Rune of Wrath and Ruin on Malekith the Witch King. Trollhammers and cannons firing into him from point blank range as the Dark Riders get chased off the map by some artillery as well. A bunch of Rangers are still free and still able to fire in. But the Bleak Swords, with Murderous Prowess popped, they ran through 1 unit of Trollhammers, which is unfortunate. It's an expensive unit to be losing only 4 minutes into the battle. Soul Stealer down from Malekith to keep him in the fight because he's starting to get a little bit low. And there was a smexual little sandwich there on the Sisters of Slaughter, and they were taken care of pretty quickly by the Dwarf Phalanx and the full surround from their shield walls. Malekith is going to be able to survive cannon crews beginning to turn their attention towards him, but if he jukes beyond the trees, should be able to dodge a lot of their shots and avoid a lot of the incoming damage. And now it's reset time. The Dark Elves have done a great job of using the Sisters of Slaughter to flank and start putting pressure on the back. Harpies are on top of the Rangers and might be able to chase them off. Rangers are not horrible in melee, but like I said, they only have roughly 40 armor compared to the 80 of Quarrelers and Thunderers, which can be a problem for them in a drag-it-out fight with Harpies or some of these light cav units. Rangers, the Bugman's Rangers, are going to get decapitated by the whips of Eldrazor, Lord of Blades. Sisters of Slaughter with that 20% ward save on top of their 20% physical resistance. Yeah, it's a lot to deal with for sure. They're a very good unit against Dawi. You combine all that speed, all that killing power, and that high melee defense, it means they are deceptively tanky. They're very hard to bring down. Trollhammer's doing what they can to turn that fight in the Dwarfs' favor, but Bleak Sword's about to rear charge them. Trollhammers need to get their asses moving, and the Dwarfs are slowly getting surrounded and covered in volleys of armor-piercing ranged fire, while the Light Cav and Harpies are feasting. So things are beginning to shift towards the Dark Elves right now. They're doing a very good job of making sure that for each infantry unit or each range unit on the Dawi side of the field, they're sending one of their own melee units in to tie them down. Rear charge from the Dark Riders won't deal an impressive amount of damage, but they don't really need to. They just need to stuff them up while Malekith and the real killers, the Sisters of Slaughter, do their work. And combined together, it's proving to be a lot for the Dawi to handle. But 2 important things to note here. Both Dark Shards are still online and taking 0 damage whatsoever. They each have about half their ammo as well, so that's a lot they could do with those armor-piercing bolts. Malekith is still alive, which is important, obviously. Soul Stealer should be able to keep him in the fight if he's able to continue casting that. And both cannon crews for the Dwarfs are still alive as well. They were pulled away from their cannons and have just now rejoined the fray and are getting on, ready to snipe high-value targets once again. Obviously, Malekith is going to be the big one. If the cannons can fire into him and destroy him and his chariot, then that will be a huge loss for the Druki. Gaze of Malice coming in, doing some decent damage to the Dwarf Warriors, who have 38 kills right now. Malekith is still on the hunt. He's into the Rangers and should be able to finish them off quite quickly. Destroyer and the dual Raptors doing a number on these Rangers, and yeah, they are about to fear rout. He is just carving them apart. Very satisfying to watch the Witch King slice some stunties up. They are peasants, and he is the rightful Eternity King and the architect of the War of the Beard. Some wondrous big stick diplomacy from Malekith the Witch King on that front to build something so terrible that essentially put 2 races back millennia. Destroyed much of their military power. But here, we got a dwarf cannon that is back online, and it might be able to strike some vengeance on the so-called Eternity King. If it's able to fire, Malekith better move real quick. Gorgeous charge into the flank of the Rangers, but neither cannon was destroyed. They were protected pretty well all game. They pulled away from the cannons when things got scary, and now Malekith has fallen. His Raptors are out of the picture. The Chariot is out of the picture. The Rune Lord is beating up on the Bleak Swords, and as they break away to destroy the cannon, realizing the threat that it poses, well, you guys are not going anywhere. Point blank cannon volleys like they're straight out of Glory in the Massachusetts Regiment at Fort Wagner. You guys have seen that movie, Matthew Broderick, I think Denzel Washington, and Morgan Freeman. The last scene in that movie is a cannon opening up at point blank range, and that is what is happening here. And with Malekith dead, it's going to be a shattered force, but both sides in complete tatters. Only a handful of models left on the Dwarfs, but with the Witch King out of the picture, it was a quick dissolution of the Dark Elves army. Pretty interesting game though, and this is why I love playing with those layered kind of builds. I think if you go for a more compact formation there, the Sisters would just have a field day. The Dark Riders and Harpies would just have a field day. When you don't have a lot of space in between your ranged tools, then it means that one charge or one attack from the Harpies on Overwatch can easily shut down multiple units and keep bouncing back and forth between them. But if you put a lot of space between your units and force them to go through shield wall after shield wall, even if what you're putting in the front ranks are miners or dwarf warriors, which are hardly incredibly tanky troops, makes it much more difficult to shut down the high value stuff like the cannons. And the fact that they were able to get back online and snipe out Malekith was the only reason the dwarfs were able to win that battle. RTK Terras played that really well. I think he got the Harpies on the right targets for the most part, was able to shut down the Rangers for huge portions of that battle. Malekith was able to get in there, but when he gets close and he gets Rune of Wrath ruined, Trollhammers and Cannons are both amazing options for quickly destroying that HP bar, and we certainly saw it there. There are other builds you can go with the Dark Elves here. Cold One Chariots are obviously a good tool, but the game before this we did the exact same thing, and he brought 2 Cold One Chariots, and they were absolutely obliterated by my Trollhammers, and he lost all the value there, and things quickly spiraled out of control. So he went for a different build here, kind of a Lizardman themed build, going for the really wide infantry formation, not giving lots of high value targets for the dwarfs to snipe out, and I think that worked out a lot better for him. Of course, you can work in some Executioners and some other high AP bonus versus infantry troops, but this kind of build with Sisters and their tankiness, their mobility, it can certainly do wonders for the Dark Elves, and a couple changes here or there might have won him the game. Dark Elves have been on a bit of a rough stretch on my channel. Obviously, they must be a terrible faction that never wins any battles. That's how it works, right? If you lose games on YouTube, you obviously suck as a faction. We'll see what we can do about getting them a win. But yeah, I do want to quickly explain why some factions people have a feeling like, oh, they must be terrible because you see them lose on YouTube. For one example, High Elves lose a lot on Turn's channel from what I've heard, and so some people have the mistaken impression the High Elves are terrible in multiplayer. They are not. The Dark Elves are not terrible in multiplayer just because they have lost a bunch of games in a row on my channel. What we do as content creators is upload videos that are close and entertaining and fun to watch, or at least we certainly try to do that, and there is always going to be the chance that one faction on one channel does poorly, but the same faction does really well on someone else's channel. Greenskins are a perfect example of that. Turn's a very good Greenskins player. He's going to have a lot of Greenskins wins. I typically don't play Greenskins very much, so I'm not going to have a lot of Greenskins wins on my channel, or certainly not as many as he does. So that kind of stuff can kind of be a confirmation bias for people in thinking that, oh, this faction is ass, this faction is good. Typically, it has absolutely nothing to do with anything. I could lose 100 matches in a row with the Vampire Coast on YouTube, but it means nothing about their viability as a competitive faction. So that's one thing to think about. Dark Elves are certainly good. They have lost a lot of battles on my channel recently. We'll do what we can to get them a win, and one that is close and entertaining to watch. But that is first and foremost why we do what we do. We upload battles that are fun to watch. And so if the Dark Elves happen to lose a bunch of those on my channel, it doesn't matter. I'm still going to upload them. Hope you guys enjoyed. I'll see you next time. Peace out.